Good afternoon and welcome to the July 26th, 2023 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. And thank you again for joining us. And with that, I call this work session to order, and I will turn it over to the city manager to talk about the strategic plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Feels really good to be here today talking about this again, especially because we've been working on it for a long time. And for me, it sort of fills in that last kind of click in the rhythm we talked about of eventually getting to a place where we're talking with our community, getting survey, planning around that, developing a budget, and doing all of that sort of based on strategy, right? Talk to the community, you create a plan, you budget for it. So it all kind of comes around and around, and it's taken a while to get here. And I feel really good about the work that is really integrating a lot of the work we've been doing over the years and builds on many conversations we've had. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke, who will walk through it, and then maybe we'll see where we're at the end. I may want to make a couple of closing comments.
Great. Jason, can you go ahead and share the presentation? That looks great. Thank you. Can you all see okay? Great. Awesome. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. For those watching at home, I am Brooke Freed, Chief of Staff for the City Manager's Office, and I'm here with Jason Dedrick, our Program Manager for Policy Research, Strategic Planning, and Performance. We're excited to be back with you again today to discuss the final draft of the 2023-2026 Strategic Plan. Before we get into the details of the plan, we briefly wanted to revisit the process to date. As a refresher, back in the summer of 2022, we conducted a community-wide survey to understand the community's experience and priorities. The input from the community survey directly shaped the strategic planning retreat in the fall of 2022. That is where we developed a foundation for our plan, including our results statement and focus areas. We also worked on some initial goals and actions that could respond to the community's needs. In January of 2023, Sarah and I met with you in a work session, and we received your feedback regarding the focus areas and their associated sort of where we were going. You provided some really helpful feedback that helped us to refine those focus areas. So the goals and actions that appear in the plan today include key goals and outcomes from your 2021 work. We drew from existing city plans, such as the CSI, the CAP 2.0, and the HIP. And we also as we were building these goals and high impact actions, we were looking at the current city context. So that included our current financial condition and our workforce condition. We, in that refinement process, we worked with staff across the city who have expertise in these areas and who are responsible for leading and supporting that work. So today, we will be looking for your confirmation of the strategic goals in particular, as those, along with the focus areas, are the areas in the plan that we expect to stay consistent through the plan period. This also acknowledges that our actions may need to be adjusted over the course of time as we assess their impact. Starting with our focus areas, following your feedback in January, we made some adjustments. Notably, here you'll see that we have 4 rather than 5 focus areas, and we have combined what was previously known as people, time, and money, and how we do our work to become organizational well-being. We also made some adjustments to the culture of belonging focus area based on your feedback. This focus area, you'll see more in the subsequent slides, but this area focuses more on the community culture of belonging rather than the organizational belonging, and emphasizes the whole community experiencing belonging. Aspects related to staff belonging are now situated within the organizational well-being focus area. When we met with you in January, you asked for a little more clarity on how your 2021 council goals and outcomes relates to the current plan. So this graphic here will help to demonstrate where those items are located within the plan. You'll see the green items fall within urgent community needs focus area. The orange items are within the culture of belonging. Teal items are communication and outreach, and the purple items are organizational well-being. So these items that have lit up are key items that are being prioritized within the plan. And that's to say that these are areas where we really want to see the organization lean in and help us to make impact in these key areas. So within the plan, what you'll see are goals and high impact actions that help us further this work in particular. For the items that did not light up, those still remain important parts of our city work, and we continue to sustain our ongoing efforts in these areas. So we've also included some information regarding these efforts in the appendix to the plan.
This diagram is intended to communicate that there is a significant amount of overlap between the 4 key focus areas. This means that work in one focus area will likely leverage outcomes in other focus areas. For example, actions that we take to improve urgent community needs or address urgent community needs, such as housing or safety, could improve community members' sense of belonging, and vice versa as well. This overlap indicates that we have a well-integrated plan rather than one where the focus areas are separate. It also highlights that some actions easily could have been located in multiple focus areas. However, ultimately, we had to choose just one location. The next few slides will provide an overview of the strategic goals within each focus area. Each focus area has a series of strategic goals, and in the plan document, each set of goals has high impact actions associated with them. These actions are intended to focus primarily on the things that are within our control as an organization. Underlying those actions, but not included in the plan, will be a series of measures and metrics that will help us assess progress. These are still under development and will be strengthened by departmental level action planning, which will begin this fall. While there are many more organizational actions that support the goals than are shown in the plan document, the plan really focuses on those that are most likely to move the dial on important community outcomes. The slides that follow focus solely on the strategic goals, as our intention today is to confirm our overall strategic direction. Urgent community needs is the first focus area and the one with the most goals and high impact actions. This focus area is about making progress on some of the most pressing needs in the community. For this and all of the focus areas, the high impact actions are drawn as much as possible from existing plans and efforts, which are already generating outcomes in support of these goals. The first goal is related to safety. The 6 high impact actions included in the plan in support of this goal were drawn heavily from the Community Safety Initiative, as this is existing work that is directed toward sense of safety in the community. I mentioned that measures and metrics are still in development. However, example measures for this item might include monitoring the sense of personal safety item over time in the community survey, as well as monitoring things such as average response time for public safety personnel. The second goal is related to climate action and community resilience. The 6 high impact actions in support of this goal were drawn heavily from the Climate Action Plan 2.0, which conveniently specifically identifies high impact actions. The next 2 goals, number 3 and 4, address our 2 top concerns from the community survey, housing and homelessness. There are 13 high impact actions that support these 2 goals, the majority of which were pulled directly from the housing implementation pipeline, since these are actions we are already committed to and working on. Final 3 goals, 5, 6, and 7, all relate to economic prosperity. These address issues related to downtown, the business environment, and wages. Specifically, this also addresses the wage portion of the housing cost equation. There are 7 high impact actions associated with these 3 goals. Telling our story is a priority for City Council, and the communication and outreach focus area contains goals and actions that will address this priority. You've also made some investments in this area in your recent budget. The first goal is really about how we communicate information out to the community so they can better understand the work that is happening to address key issues. We are in a very dynamic media environment right now, so addressing this goal means better understanding how people already receive information or how they want to receive information and be engaged with the city. The second goal is more about hearing directly from the community on the issues that are important to them and how we engage with the community more broadly. The third goal, increasing confidence in council and staff, will likely be impacted by everything we do in this plan. As a reminder, this is something that emerged from the community survey, and community trust in council and staff is higher than, and although trust in council and staff is higher than in other communities in our region, we know there is still room to improve. There are 5 high impact actions associated with the 3 goals shown here. The next focus area, culture of belonging, is the one that has seen the most work since the strategic planning workshop in the fall. This focus area is really about building a community culture of belonging. There are aspects of this item related specifically to city staff that Brooke mentioned fall under the organizational well-being focus area. While there are likely many things that we already do as an organization that impact the sense of belonging that community members feel, it is something that we want to better understand. As such, the first goal is really about better understanding belonging, what impacts it, and how the work we do at the city can impact it. It is likely that learning this information and better understanding will help create additional new actions. The second goal highlights that we want to strengthen relationships with the most marginalized groups in our community, but also that we want those strong relationships with the whole community. There are 5 high impact actions in the plan that support these 2 goals. The final focus area is the most internally facing of the 4, as it focuses on organizational well-being. There are 5 high impact actions that support these 3 goals. The first one addresses our most important asset, our employees. By increasing engagement, well-being, and belonging, we can retain our talented staff. The second goal is about being more strategic to help support a sustainable workload and continue to meet our strategic priorities. It also includes the measures and metrics we'll be developing and the community survey that we will administer again next year. Finally, the third goal addresses the sustainability of our budget in the short and long term and has a strong connection with a similar item in your council vision, values, goals document. One of the actions associated with this goal is upcoming work on sources of revenue. So next steps moving forward from today include sharing the plan with community and with our staff. We'll then begin departmental action planning efforts that will surface additional actions and will also help inform the measures that we'll use to determine if we are impacting community outcomes in the way we had intended. From there, we'll start implementing those measures so that we can begin reporting out to the community, city council, and the organization on our progress. And if we find that we are not having the intended impacts, we'll consider improvements or new actions, supporting the idea that this is a dynamic plan. As we look forward and consider the rhythm of this work, we are committed to engaging with the community on our strategic priorities through future iterations of the community survey, as well as engaging with you as a council going forward. And as you make future policy decisions as a council, we'll continue to update the plan accordingly.
Mayor, before we turn it back over to you, we just want to take a quick moment to extend our gratitude to the executive leadership team for their guidance in developing this plan, the staff from across the organization who contributed their expertise and enthusiasm to the plan, community members and local businesses who provided their input through the community survey and continue to engage with us through a bunch of different ways to make our community better and for us to let us know how they're doing. And also to you, Mayor and Council, for your engagement in this plan and shaping the direction for our organization and our community. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you for all of that. I appreciate that final note of gratitude to everyone who made this happen. And I wanted to start with my own level of gratitude that I think to have knitted together all of these other plans, and I particularly like the chart that highlights in colors the strategic plan goals with the larger goals that council has developed. It brings, I think, a lot of clarity to all the different levels. And so I think we all look forward to seeing more detail as those measurements and metrics and as the departments get to sort of work through some of those pieces. But it feels like, to me, feels like a very helpful framework that sort of creates order out of what felt a little like nebulous. Are we there? Do we understand what we're talking about? So I really appreciate all the work that went into that. So are there councilors with questions or comments? Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought what we did at that retreat was really good. My problem with it was that it didn't quite. I didn't see how it matched up with the council goals and all the plans that we had, and there was kind of a disconnect for me. And what this does extremely well, I think, is pulls all that together, pulls together what we did at the retreat, but also the council goals, how they relate, and all of the things that we're doing around homelessness and housing and climate and other financial aspects of the work that we do. So I really liked it. I thought that the bullets of high impact actions were really good. A focus on a lot on stuff that we're already doing. I guess the question I had was, how do you distinguish in those bullets from ones that we're already doing or are underway and ones that we haven't started yet? And is there a way to distinguish those a bit more?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't, you're right that we haven't designated ones that are starting, but by and large, I would say all of the high impact actions are ones where we already have policy direction and plans in place. As we roll out the departmental action planning, there might be areas through that process where individual staff might think about their work differently and how they might shift to contribute to higher impact toward those organizational goals. So that might be areas where folks will start to think about their work in new ways. But I'd say throughout this plan, the high impact actions are ones where we generally have policy direction and resources behind those efforts.
Yeah, I guess the further distinction would be underway or not underway, and if completed. But I don't see that where I have too many that are complete. Okay, thank you. I thought it was really good work. Very good work.
Yeah.
Hey, Randy and then Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too want to say thank you for the effort that went into this. I know these processes take time and they're never easy. I'm kind of where the mayor is on this. I'm eager to see some of the detail coming out of the departments. When I look at what we have so far, I understand it, but I try and put myself in the shoes of Jill or Joe, community member, and look at it, what's in it for me, what's helping me in my life, what's helping me in my community. And I think that it's going to be critical to have these action items laid down so people understand what we are trying to focus on in order to achieve what are in some cases pretty lofty goals. And so I think the faster we can get going on that, and maybe not even wait till it's all done, but start bringing it back in pieces might be helpful, just so people can see how we are moving forward, because we have, as you know, some big issues before us that people are wanting to see them fixed yesterday, and we're not going to be able to do that. But to see how we are approaching it, I think it's going to be very important for credibility and trying to bring people together and align towards some common goals and objectives. So that's really all I have to say at this point. But thank you for where we are at this point.
Hey, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all the work that staff has done on this. As my colleagues have all mentioned, I appreciate the fact that we're trying to look at this from a holistic and a 30,000-foot level. My question is one of similar nature. I'm looking at this as a whole. I'm really happy to see, and so prominently displayed in the presentation that Jason was kind enough to put up there and talk about a little bit, and Brooke. One of the key parts I saw was about the measures and the metrics that we'll have as a part of this after the fact. And I think that's awesome. I think that's important. And frankly, I don't think we do it enough. But all of those metrics and measures are things that come after the fact of the actions that we're contemplating taking in alignment with the strategic plan. My question is how to get better advance information. So for example, I'd like our decisions to be informed by better third-party objective information. As a, for example, and I don't mean to create a controversy, but saying it is just the best example I could think of. On Monday night, we made a decision and we had advice, testimony, we had information from all ranges of professional folks who work in the field, all of which told us don't do that. And we did it anyway. And we may measure it a couple of years after the fact reasonably well, but instead of reaching or moving towards reaching our strategic goals of less homelessness and more housing available, we took the opposite tack, where every piece of advice we had was that it will do exactly the opposite. It will make the matter worse, not better. I would like to see us getting better information in advance that is presented in a way that the majority of council can digest and understand and work with and feel good about, for better decision making along the way when it comes to some of these strategic goals. Is there any, I guess I'm asking the manager here, I don't know who I'm asking. Is there any ideas or any discussions taking place on better objective advice and information in front of actions taken towards some of these strategic goals?
I think when I'm listening to you, I think that it's going to really vary by item. The one that you're talking about, I think, there's how much information you want in advance. And so in the case that you're talking about, if there's not good data available as we're coming into work sessions on big items like policy items, and that's what I think where you weigh in, we're coming in on policy items. It's really, we can tell you here's what's available, and you can say, we actually want to pause and take some time to gather more information about how we would measure it ahead of time before we move forward. We could always do that. But on some of the other actions, I think, what we're looking for here from the council is, are we generally heading in the right direction, right? That's as a elected body, are we going in the right direction? Because the actions are going to move and shift. And so I think it would be helpful to meet with you and get a sense of like, which of these are you feeling like we don't have enough advanced baseline information on, besides the one that you mentioned?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from councilors? Jennifer.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to thank everyone also for this process. When it first started and we were going to do it really quick, I've been involved in several strategic plan processes and none of them have been quick. And I was a little skeptical, but I think it worked out really well. And I think taking that break and letting staff work on it in the background was a good choice. And we're at a really good place that I feel comfortable with. I want to say, I actually agree with some of what Mike's saying. I think this is a totally separate issue from, maybe it's a council operations, like how we do our work issue that's separate from the strategic plan. But I do think we have had this conversation multiple occasions about how do we get good advice and whether that comes from staff or whether that comes from other people. So I think it's worth our time to discuss in a separate conversation. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments from councilors who haven't spoken yet? I would say a couple of things is that we have on some of these issues engaged outside consultants. On climate, we engaged the Good Company to get that, sort of objective data framework in order to make a decision. So it's, I think it, as the manager said, it has varied from topic to topic, sort of what level of information is available, what level of detail council really needs in order to understand an issue. So it seems like it's always worth talking about, but yeah, Emily.
have a new computer, which I don't like at all, and it's giving me troubles. Going back to the general topic and not how we get more information, I just want to reiterate what some of the other counselors said. I think this was a really complex thing to distill. The survey was kind of all over the place and yet all in the same place at once. And so dividing that out was difficult, as well as all the crises and challenges we're facing. I think you were able to bring certainly the high level, but a good grouping of our challenges, both in different groups of how we work on them and what goal they meet, but just all over in general. I think it was a really good, it is a really good report on a very complicated situation. And I think it will help us going forward. We have more of a checklist that we can check in with to see how we're doing. And of course, as usual, we can always revise things as staff quivers with anticipation. But good job. Thank you very much for the work.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? I would just say, I guess I would say one other thing, which is that one of the things that we've struggled with in sort of managing the council's calendar is sort of the number of requests for work sessions and how we respond to those in a timely way. And that's come up recently. And so the other sort of value for us, I think, as a council, looking at this with your broader goals and then your strategic priorities is sort of thinking through as we're thinking about what topics and the sequence of topics, or how much emphasis we're putting on in a particular set of work session polls, of like having this as sort of a check, a way of sort of checking, like, am I proposing that we do something that falls within these strategic priorities? And if it's not within these strategic priorities, is there an urgent reason why? And so that we're thoughtful about that, given how challenging it can be to get everything on the calendar. So I'm hoping that for all of us, this becomes a little bit of a kind of a helpful framework to think about what are the questions we're asking and what questions do we need to ask and have answered in work sessions. So I really, really appreciate the staff's structure of this very much. And so there's no action required of council at this point. You'll be coming back.
No, there's a motion.
Or is there a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll turn to Randy. I guess I don't have that motion in front of me. I'll find it though.
Thank you, Mayor. Move to approve the direction outlined in the strategic plan set forth in attachment A to the AIS.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 1. Okay, thank you. That passes 6-1. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Randy, for being on it with the motion when I didn't have it in front of me. And I think with that, we can move on. We have turning this back to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm gonna share my screen. I know that's not as fun, but I think it'll help to have a few images and a reminder that we kind of came up with this concept called City Manager Updates, which could be just a nice placeholder for emerging items that come up that we don't really have the ability to do a full-on work session on, or times when work sessions drop off and there may be some projects you want updates on. So it should be a nice way to fill some of those spaces so your time is well invested. With that, I'm going to share my screen. Oops, let's just escape that. Now I'm going to share my screen. All right. So a little bit about today's project update is on the multi-use center at the Lane County Fairgrounds, and a lot of what you've been hearing about in terms of, is the city going to make a $15 million contribution? So before I dive into that, I want to just say a little bit about the problem that's trying to be solved here, since the Lane County Board of Commissioners have really been in this conversation since late December 2020, early 2021, and you haven't been really at all, other than people reaching out to you individually. So I know you all know this, but just, PK Park, the M's are, and PK Park are no longer going to be a viable solution. And the reason for that is the M's were promoted to a high A long baseball season. So they moved from high A from short A. They moved to high A from short A in the Northwest League. And the Northwest League moved to high A in 2021. So what that really means is during that time, they eliminated 2 teams. They eliminated Boise and Salem Kaiser, and the games increased from about 76 per year to about 134. So it sort of doubled their season, and a half of those are played at home. That's really hard to navigate when you're also trying to have a D1 baseball team using a facility, and both of them need practice time and both of them need play time. And it's just really challenging for them to make that work. In addition, with that move to high A, again, this is my understanding. I'm not the expert on any of this. There were new facility requirements related to that. So changes in locker room, changes to other facilities. So what we've heard is that, for one, I think the U of O is probably willing to work with them as long as they have a plan. So they're not going to just immediately kick them out, but they need to know that they have a plan going forward. And we've also heard that if we can't, as a community, find a way to build a new stadium for them, it's likely we lose them to another market. So we first learned about this, and I think the first time I met with Alan was in about October of 2020. Denny and I met with him and Brittany and the owner's rep, and they walked us through the issue that they were facing and the need for a new facility. And we had staff basically scan the entire city of Eugene. We took their field requirements, their parking requirements, which I think was about 10 acres, and we looked across the entire area to, is there any place where this could actually fit? Included public lands and private lands. And ultimately, some of the ones that kind of came to the top of the list that we were looking at could potentially work would be potentially something done in a redevelopment of Valley River Center. Looked at the 11th, the racetrack out off 11th, Chad Drive area, Golden Gardens area, the fairgrounds area. And, we're working through all the, just helping provide information. And they ultimately found that the fairgrounds actually would be the best because it had the space, it's central, feels sort of like it used to when they were at Civic, and it draws a fan base, and I think they saw a lot of really good elements there. So here's where it sits at the U of O, playing at PK Park. These are relatively the same scale, so I just use the same scale going from 1 to 1. So as we go over to the fairgrounds, the area that they're looking at is really in that northwest corner. And as you can see here, the livestock barn is the white building that has some of the yellow over it. It's impacted and the parking's impacted. So that's the area that they've been mostly looking at. In 2021, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to they were just starting off on their Lane Event Center master plan. And so they directed them to include this facility in the master plan to see if it would work and if it would be a positive addition for the neighborhood, for the broader community, and for the Lane Event Center. In December of 2021, they directed staff to continue their planning efforts. And at the time, and I think the number that most of us had in our head, the multi-use center had a price tag of about $45 million. Since that time, Lane County has approved increases to the transient lodging tax and car rental tax as potential funding sources, and they've contracted with a number of folks, design team, consultants, to land use planners to continue bringing this project forward. You can kind of see here at the bottom right some of the folks that are on that design team. But here's the conceptual design that they have put together. They've sited the facility so that it would avoid the evening sun, has an elevated concourse, given the soils and water table. I'm not going to get into a lot of it. They're imagining an enhanced 13th Avenue pedestrian amenity. They're imagining it being 2 stories. It does overlap the livestock facility, which increased the cost, which we'll get to in a minute. They imagine it as being something that could host baseball games, host the M's, but could also include a venue for concerts, youth sports, community events. They've imagined a kids' play area, a welcome plaza facing 13th, and it's also imagined to be immediately occupiable. So it's a seismic standard that can be used in an emergencies. The facility right now, I think the last I heard, the numbers for seating, so permanent seating is about 4,200. The Cuthbert is about 4,500. However, when you start to use this as a concert venue and you imagine the stage out in center field, you start to fill that up, and it could expand to include 7,000 to 10,000 folks once you start doing that. And they haven't really locked in on that. They're still just working through conceptual designs. Also in this, you can see that the livestock building is not there. So really high level cost estimates, and this is all information that's been publicly available. The new design and construction costs about $75 million. And by the time you add in soft costs and project contingency, you're up to $90 million. And that's, again, they're very conceptual. They haven't finalized any kind of designs. And they have also calculated in a $10 million rebuild for the livestock facility that they're going to have to locate someplace. As part of all of this, the Lane County is also contributing land, or I'm not sure exactly how they're doing that, but they'll need to figure out how to move that and where they would place it. And I don't know if it means they have to buy more land or if they have land. So that's just included as part of the project costs. The funding that they have identified so far includes some federal funding that is related to it being seismically resilient. So that's about 1.5. The state funds, which is considered, I think, a general fund grant, is 7.5. And Lane County, as part of raising the transient lodging tax 2 points, I believe this 35 million that they're suggesting could be contributed to it is 1.5 points of that. And that's imagined over upfront cost that's paid back over a 20-year lifespan. An important note, that they have raised that. So we've gone from a 5% county TLT to a 7% county TLT, though they have not voted to for sure give this to this project. So that's still out there, but it's identified as a source. The Emeralds are also contributing about this, so about 14 million. 10 of that is upfront lease costs, so it's $500,000 a year for 20 years. Upfront lease costs gets them to 10, and the other 3.5, as I understand it, is mostly equipment and facility specific things to the baseball team, not necessarily to the larger event center idea. So that leaves them with about a $43 million gap, which is where, the creative trying to figure out how are they going to fill that gap comes forward. They've indicated that they're pursuing an additional 1.5 from the federal government and they asked for the 7.5 in the legislature. They didn't get it, but they'll be going back again. I just want to make sure. Again, the cost estimate is based on comparable projects that they've looked at around the country and assumes that the project is authorized to proceed in this sort of August, September timeline. One of Alan had asked on Monday night to include why was there such an increase in cost. Part of it was they got a better understanding of what Major League Baseball's specifications were going to be. They couldn't find a solution that didn't include moving the livestock barn and replacing it. They're going to have to reconfigure parts of the parking lot and the infrastructure related to that. They hadn't anticipated that. They've increased the immediate occupancy seismic standard. They've gotten a better understanding of what SDCs and permits cost. There's cost escalation, and there will continue to be cost escalation. So if they don't, make a decision this year and it goes into next year, it goes up another, it continues to go up just like we have experienced with our projects. And there's an inclusion of a 1.5% for green energy that they had not identified. So I'm going to talk a little bit about TLT because there's been a lot of questions about that to me. So the transient lodging tax, on the left-hand side, we used to collect transient lodging tax for Lane County. The last we did that was in 2022, but here are the numbers for 2022. So as you look across the county, close to half of it comes from Eugene specific hotels and short-term rentals that are paying that. And the rest comes from Springfield and the rest of the county. So Eugene, up until the county increased that, we had a 4.5% city TLT and a 5% county. So they just raised it to 7%. And this is kind of how we compare when you look out across other places. So Portland's at 11.5 now too. Beaverton's higher. Washington County just generally has a higher rate at 9%. Surrounding cities to Eugene are lower. So Eugene and Springfield are the only ones that have 4.5%. The rest are at 4%. Bend, Deschutes County doesn't charge a transient lodging tax inside the city of Bend. They just do it in the rural areas. And then in Ashland and Salem, the counties don't charge a tax, so the city taxes are higher. I think that's important when we get to the funding piece. The current status, as I understand it, is that this first whole part of this project is trying to determine first, was this project going to work at the Lane Event Center and be something that could be an improvement? And I think they got to a yes on that, which is why they've moved forward with a lot of this work. This next piece is it within reach? Are they able to, is it feasible actually to get enough capital construction dollars to build the facility? And once I think they say, yes, we think that's within reach or striking distance, as they say, then they have to dive into the operations and maintenance and determine what that's going to cost, who's going to pay for it, what are those agreements. That still needs to be negotiated. It hasn't been. Who's going to be programming? Are the M's going to take on programming of the facility year round? Is it going to be the county? Is it going to be somebody else? That hasn't been determined yet. I don't think any of the pieces around how much community use, all of that is yet to be determined. So they're still in this, is the construction within reach status. This gets a little bit important because when we get into funding discussion, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that when we started saying, how could the city contribute? I'll just say a couple of things before I start into that. I will just say from day one, I've been really clear with the M's and the county that the city does not have funding to just contribute. And when we started this conversation, it was really only about SDCs and permit fees. Could the city waive SDCs? Could the city waive permit fees? And just like other big projects, we've said, well, we don't have a way to waive them, but we can work with you to figure out how they get reduced. And it's possible that the council may want to make that contribution. And that was really the ask of us, was that we do that. So we've been talking about this for some time because we thought that was really going to be the city's contribution. So one of the ways that we've talked about, in addition, we don't have final designs, so we don't actually know what the numbers are, but we did the model, when the VA built off of Chad Drive, we did an agreement where we used the increase in property taxes from that project to pay their SDCs and fees going forward. And we just kind of negotiated that. And we've been collecting it. So we kind of waived it, but we only waived it knowing we were going to collect it and designate that property tax amount to repaying that. And that's a council decision to happen. And something like that could happen here because we know probably 50%, as I understand it, a portion of this will be subject to increased property taxes because it's a private entity that's going to be operating in there at some time. So that is an opportunity for us to look at when we know better numbers around the building permits and SDCs. That could be a potential funding source. And we've used that creative model twice, and it's worked, and it's possible it could work here. I'm not certain though, because I don't have the numbers. Folks have talked about, could we raise transient lodging tax inside the city, or countywide, could the county raise it again? We're not the highest in the state, but we're tapping up against it. There's pros and cons, and it's really hard for me I'm going to try to stay as neutral as I can. But as you can see from the numbers, there'll be some concerns, I'm sure, voiced if the city of Eugene decides to raise transient lodging tax and increase that just on the Eugene hotels and instead of just an overall larger countywide. And it has implications for all of our services going forward because we fund all of our cultural services and amenities. All of that kind of tourism is funded with this. And so we would not be able to do other projects without another funding source. Some have talked about a voter approved bond. Could the county do a bond to, close a bigger piece of this gap or a bigger part of the project, or could the city do it for a city portion of that? We talked about associated fees because when I met with Alan, I said this, just like the county has to find a new revenue source. And what they did was the TLT piece, which we all thought would be enough to cover that kind of local investment. We would need to find new revenues too. So we started looking at, are there, even though it's not our facility and it's not on our property and the county may have some concerns with that. Are there ticket fees? Are there patron user fees? Are there parking fees? Are there ways to generate that revenue? Since we've had some conversations with the county this week and we understand that they don't actually have an operations and maintenance agreement yet, and that's not factored in, I'm assuming that some of those revenues are going to have to go to that. So that's just out there. You've discussed land sales and selling parkland. Other than vacant properties that we have in the downtown, there's nothing really kind of ready to just put on the market that would, even at best, would generate more than $1 million or $2 million. So that's just a piece out there unless you get into really selling much larger pieces. And again, that all of these could be done by the city or the county. Other revenues, let me just see. So other revenues, I put this on there because we're about to explore a whole lot of revenue options. Staff are starting the research on how do you fund different things across, how do you fund homelessness? How do you fund climate? What are some different creative things that are happening across the city? And we could certainly explore this. So what's pushing up against that is the timeline that we've been told by the M's that has to be sooner. So that just makes it harder, but there may be other revenues out there that we haven't thought about. And then all of that is, also just ultimately we'll have to make a decision about how this all stacks up against other priorities that you have. And the ones that are listed here, they are not the only ones. There are some of the ones that have been mentioned most recently. The ones in blue being things that have been talked about really more at the council table. You've already talked about it. Or it's at least been mentioned in a work session, and the ones on the right being things that are sort of new. The regional pickleball facility ask that has emerged and something you'll probably need to talk about when you come back from break. And but right before I started in this role, there was discussion about a multicultural center, and there's still a lot of talk of that happening in the community around a multicultural center. So there's other things that are out there that you'll need to discuss. And that's really kind of what I wanted to present and leave you as a talking point. I think for me, the most important, at least piece right now that staff are going to continue working on is understanding, starting with that first piece that we knew we were going to be asked to do around SDCs and permits, really trying to understand what is that cost and how could we potentially fund that, if we can potentially fund that. And then this ability to get from there to $15 million, it starts to get a lot harder unless there's a larger revenue stream that's happening at a county level or something that folks potentially are voting on. And with that, I'll stop talking and let you ask questions. Denny's here with me, and he has a lot more information about the project, like specifics about, the details of what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Manager, that was very, very kind of helpful, clear presentation of how we got here and the pieces. So I really appreciate that. I have Jennifer, Randy, and Greg in the queue. So take it away, Jennifer.
Thanks. So I think I was a little confused. So I want to verify a few things. So were the federal immediate occupancy and the state funds, they're verified? Because it looked like it was in two spots. Is that because
Yes.
they're trying to get it twice or?
Yes.
Okay, so they're trying to get it a second time to
Yes.
double it. Okay. That's clear. Okay. For the 3.5 million, so that is a combination of equipment and stuff they would need to buy and pre-rent, but not actual cash that they are investing in the facility. Is that right? From the M's money.
That's how I understand it. Denny, if you have, actually, I'm not, Denny, if you have more information on what that 3.496, whatever that number was, is.
Yeah, again, as Sarah indicated, my understanding of the breakdown is they would prepay the rent for the use of the stadium, assuming it's county owned. And that would be, if it's $500,000 over 20 years, that's a $10 million contribution that they would use that then to put into the stadium construction and not be obligated to pay rent every year after that because they're paying it all up front. And then the rest is what they call FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment, just other things that are part of the public stadium, but are more specific to the M's use. So I don't know exactly what that might mean, but it might have something to do with batting cages and all the things that are really baseball specific.
Okay, so at this time, we're not aware that they're putting money into building the facility. They're asking our local community to build this facility at this point. I mean, I'm not saying that's bad or good. I just want to understand.
Yeah, I don't want to mischaracterize it. I think what they're saying is, I suppose you could interpret it that way.
I mean, pre-rent is not
rent and they're
because they're just prepaying it. It's not like they're not going to get that money later. That's not they're not putting that up front to pay for this facility in a way. Okay. I just want to make sure I understand. Okay.
And I just think I should add that none of that's been negotiated yet. So we're making some assumptions about how that would work that I think I just would proceed with a little bit of caution using what I said is because they really haven't negotiated. They could pay rent every year thereafter. That could be negotiated, but that was at least our understanding is how it's been discussed thus far.
So I assume you guys, I know Alan asked some really good questions about, are they making a commitment to stay? But that's probably too early to know that stuff also. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Randy and then Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Sarah, for the information. I've been longing to understand some of the deal points and the financing. Do you know if a pro forma has been done on what we can expect a stadium like this to produce in the way of income / revenue?
I do believe that the Eco Northwest did some work for them back in 2021 on that. I don't have that right here with me, but I think there has been some work done that's publicly available.
I think that'd be interesting to see. Second thing, going to, surcharge on tickets. Do we even know if the city could use that mechanism, or since it's on county property, would it be county? So
here's how this conversation went. My assumption is that the county would be doing that, right? But when we met with Alan and I said, we would need to establish a new revenue source, and we just started brainstorming. And his place was sort of like, whatever works to make it happen. He was open, they're open to, because they're trying to figure it out. So we haven't talked about this with the county, like, hey, would you let us, I assume that would be a bit of a challenge because I think they're going to need to do that too.
Another suggestion kind of question is, would there be the possibility of charging a surcharge on non-high school related sports venues on tickets? And that would include the University of Oregon.
Yeah, I would have to, we would definitely need to do that research. And actually, I assume this might come up as part of the revenue conversations anyway, like what can we legally do? We've explored in the past just casually conversations around that with others. in attempts to raise money for. So for example, to raise money to do the Riverfront Festival as part of like the IAFF event. And those conversations, they're not well received. I'll say that, but I don't know if it's illegal. I just know we'd have some work to do.
Well, I'm just thinking, I know we spend a lot of money serving and protecting U of O facilities, and we don't receive much in return. And this would be a way of contributing back to our community. That's all I have for now. I may come back with a second round, Mayor.
Okay, Greg, and then Alan, and then Mike.
Yeah, Sarah, so with the list that you just outlined in terms of sources for funding, I kind of zero in on the whole bond piece, and I understand that we don't have a lot of time, that there's a deadline that's coming up that's been imposed by Major League Baseball in terms of whether we have a commitment or not, and also a time frame in terms of having a new stadium built. I believe it's by the end of 2026, or we would open by the 2026 season. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact date. That sounds close.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think once they have a plan and there's some commitment, I think there's a little bit more flexible, a little more flex.
So if we were talking about a bond measure, will we be talking about a city initiative, or are we talking a county initiative? Or could there be a combined initiative around a bond? Then that way, you put it in the voters' hands.
Yeah, I think it could be done either way. It could be a county-wide and we work together on that, or it could be, city only. County-wide probably makes the most sense, similar to the TLT, having a county-wide, everyone in the county is helping pay for that.
And what would be the time frame around us being able to work with the county in terms of putting a measure on the ballot? Will we be looking at, I know we probably would not be looking at this fall, but probably, spring of 24?
Yeah, I think that would be as soonest. And it seems like from past, it would have to be a decision you make by about February at the latest, I would think.
Okay. That gives me some help there. And then the last question I think I have on this is, what are we, do we have any idea of what numbers we're looking at as far as fees and or SDC charges? What would be the upper limit of that, or have we gotten to that level of analysis yet?
I think based on their conceptual design, I think between the SDCs, the construction excise tax, and their building permit fees and all that land use fees, all of the things, they still have a lot of steps to go through. It's probably getting close to $2 million.
Okay, so it would be more or less a drop in a bucket, in terms of soft cost, and not closing the gap that much to get to the 15 million that they want us to pitch in. Correct?
Yeah, it's not 15, but I think they would say everything really helps to try to close that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Alan, then Mike.
Thanks, Mayor. So I've been very supportive of the M's. I was going back to the Civic Stadium before it burned down. That was part of the effort to keep that there. But times changed, things moved around. And so almost entirely this conversation about the M's new stadium has been held at the county, with Lane County. We're just now being brought into this conversation, thus the need for a 101, which almost all of that was kind of news to me. We haven't seen any of that. So and I understand our contributions, the SDCs and the fees, plus all the Eugenian contributions to all the increases in rental car fees and CRT. So, and it's not to say that we're not contributing. That's not correct. And then the $10 million, that was kind of news to me. I thought that was a cash contribution towards the stadium price, construction price. It's instead it's paying forward rent, which means their actual contribution is zero, except for that equipment stuff, which I think is baseball oriented, sounded like, but I'm not super clear on that. I guess the other question I had is around operating costs. Randy called it pro forma. I think it's easy to build something. It's harder to sustain it without things like a long-term commitment from the M's. Are they going to sign a long-term lease that they're bound to? Are they? Is there an O&M dollar agreement about how to pay for this? What's the annual cost and what's the annual revenue coming? How does that balance out? See any of that with no rent being paid by the M's? That gives me a lot of pause. I haven't seen how this actually pencils out because we're new to this discussion. I have floated the idea of a revenue bond, provided the operations and maintenance part works out and is self-sustaining. A revenue bond, I've talked about that a couple of times. Put it out to a vote. If we need to put out a $40 million revenue bond or some kind of bond, then I think putting it out at the county level makes most sense. I don't think you could do a joint one. I think it would have to be one or the other entity probably, and let people vote on it. I think the M's want to stay. I think they have a pretty good chance of passing that. So there's just a lot of questions to this deal that are still unanswered. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I see a very big timer in front of me. Thank you. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Sarah and Denny, I'm not looking for a comprehensive list with this question, but a general one about what the county has to date agreed to or not agreed to yet. It seems to me the only thing they've agreed to is to continue to ask the what if questions. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I think that they've agreed and they have raised the taxes, but they have not agreed to give them to this project yet. They've been talking about 1.5, but I think they still have to vote on that. They've agreed to a lot of very operational things. So
they agreed to
hiring it.
Have that built there.
Agreed to what?
Allow the thing to be built on the fairground. They said, yeah, that's okay with us.
Well, they've been proceeding forward with design and construction, and I think what my understanding of the current thing is, they've directed staff to say, is it feasible? And as part of that, they've hired a consultant that does this kind of work on baseball stadiums, the Klosh Group. They've hired Satry Group to start their land use planning. They've hired Lease Crutcher Lewis as a kind of design build contractor. So they've brought a lot of people onto the team to move it forward, but they haven't given the final yes. And I don't think they've signed any. I asked, is there a memorandum of understanding that says we're doing this? I don't think any of that is in place yet. I think it's
go ahead.
That it feels like, but they are investing real money on getting it designed and seeking funding.
Has the county had any, at commissioner level, have they had any out loud public conversations about selling the fairgrounds?
The whole fairgrounds?
Yes.
Oh, no, I've never heard that.
Okay. I had too, as Alan mentioned, I got involved with the group for a while with Scott up at Tsunami Books and everybody else that was involved in trying to save the Fairgrounds and Civic Stadium in the first place. That was a pretty thing to me at the time. The M's are, a part of our heart here in the community, and I feel strongly about finding a way to make this happen. However, the numbers are pretty tall, and I don't know off the top of my head, without taking some pretty drastic changes in our community, how we make this happen together. And it sounds like, although they're investing and asking all the right questions, the county yet hasn't said we're committed to this either in any way. I know that there is now an organization who's hired a PR firm to work against the idea of the M's going there and using public money to do it. So I'm of two minds right now, and I'm skeptical about what it requires to get this done without some pretty brilliant, brainstorming at this point. But I'm certainly open to it. So that's kind of where I am with what I'm hearing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Emily.
Thank you. We've gotten a gazillion, hundreds of emails, which have been very impressive. They've all been individually written. So I know that the M's are really important to a lot of people. I don't hear from the people who don't care. I do hear from the people, especially that live nearby and will be affected. We just had the fair, which is very loud with the concerts. I don't live quite near the fairgrounds, but I can hear them. And it will be quite a few nights. So I think the fairgrounds are great, but I'm also hearing concerns from my constituents that it's not great at all. And we just had our strategic plan, and not that long ago that we did our budget. And we just identified a huge number of actions that we want to take that will cost money. And I'm not sure that we have allocated that money, since we have such an enormous budget gap. And those needs need to be taken care of also. So is a stadium as important as what we could fund with that money? And do enough people want it? Would a bond pass? I don't know. As far as SDCs and permits, we bring those up every time we want to fund something. And I just don't see how, with this continued money source, we're doing any system developments and inspecting buildings and all those things that the permits are paid for. So if we're not getting that money, then what's suffering? What's not getting paid for with all that loss? And then we've heard from a lot of people, and I totally understand that. As much as I think we need to keep the M's in Eugene, but I don't think we can use city money that I've just discussed needs to be somewhere else to support a private business, not even in state, to build something which evidently they don't want to pay to actually build on county land. I don't think the city's got enough money to be giving it to a private business and essentially to the county. So it's a real dilemma. It's something I want to happen, but there's other things I need to have happen. How can I justify that much money? And if we have that much, why aren't we spending it on something else or investing in the steam plant, which would make us money? So I want it, but I don't see how we can pay for it.
Okay, thank you for that. Greg.
Question for Sarah or Denny. Has there been any extensive talk about the off-season programming opportunities for this stadium proposal? So there'll be so many dates that would be taken up by baseball. And then, people have talked about, it being a concert venue, maybe a venue for other types of larger events that could come in there, and what would be the possibilities around that facility hosting other events? That's one question. Second question is, there has been a need, and I was on the fair board years ago for 4 years in the late 2000s, and the fairgrounds was and still has been a struggling facility for a long time. At one point, I think I described it as being dilapidated. I was told that by a county commissioner, no, Greg, you got to understand it's a vintage facility. But that facility has been struggling for a long time. And I think that one of the things that we need to think about in a broader picture is where is the county with master planning for the whole 55 acre footprint of the facility, and what are we looking at in terms of convention space, which is desperately needed in this community if we're going to attract mid-level conventions, to a multi-use facility that can be purposed and repurposed multiple times for a variety of events that can bring in TLT and other revenues to the city.
Yeah. So, so two things: the ops programming in the off season. I've just heard the conceptual things that we've all heard. They've talked about a lot of concerts and community use and a desire, and I believe in all that. I don't think any of that has been put into any kind of a written agreement or hasn't been decided whether the M's would be the full-time tenant and they would control and program that, or whether there's a different, but we just don't have the answer to that. I know
no pro forma.
No, not that I've seen. I don't think so. Denny, you can jump in. And then they were proceeding forward with a master plan, and that this actually needed to sort of jumpstart it. So that's really what jumpstarted this whole project, was the board saying, hey, go forth and see whether this would work under the master plan. I don't think they've completed the overall master plan, but I would need to follow up on that. I think when the board had their last meeting on this, it was the end of June, was the first time all these numbers became very public and they started talking about it. They basically said in that meeting, they didn't make a decision, but that they realized later this summer that they're going to have to make a decision about whether they're going to continue, they're going to direct staff to continue working on this, or whether they're going to pause until they have the funding gaps. And the timing is really just the issue. That may be more. And I feel a little bit like, as I hear you all talk, I feel like I have to say again, like, this is really to the best of my understanding. And we're trying to give you like really neutral, clean facts, but it's possible, like, if something's off, we will follow up immediately with an email that says, hey, I had that wrong. So.
Okay, thank you. Emily.
Thank you. I'm really concerned about the alternate uses of it. It's open air. How many concerts are you going to have there in January? We don't use Cuthbert every night, and it holds about the same number of people, and it's already built. So it may be a fallacy that we can actually use this arena all that often. And in the winter, it will just sit there. It's not an Egan Center. So I think that's a really big concern. Will we have an empty arena there? If the M's do leave, then what do we do with it? Especially if they're not putting money into its construction. We've got an arena. I guess we can play sports there in the summer. I'm concerned about the livestock. If we don't take care of that, we're not accommodating a section of the community that may be smaller, but is certainly important. It has been the fairgrounds, which has traditionally included animals. When this was first brought up, I heard it was a no-go because county wouldn't look at it until the master plan was done, and that would be a couple years. But since this was so time sensitive, they agreed to do this, look at it first, and then include that into a master plan. And a bunch of years ago, they were thinking, or there was some movement towards selling it to have a hospital here. But we didn't get that hospital. I lived really close to it then. I was like, ooh, property values go up if we build a hospital. And I'd be really hesitant to put money in it when we don't know where the other money's coming from. It's a really big project that's unfunded. So once again, I want the M's to stay, and I don't know that it's the city's job in these really times we need to be frugal to do this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to chime in. I appreciate what everybody has said. I feel also that it feels like the county has not finally made a commitment that they're all in to do this, which makes it, I have felt all along that the 15 million ask of the city that has come sort of informally and not directly to council was a little bit arbitrary and not sort of based on what we could afford or any conversation that we had. So I'm a little frustrated with that. Also, I in my meetings with the both the M's and the owners and the baseball folks, asked about private investment and sponsorships and other sources that would soften the burden on public dollars to do this. And and there wasn't really a strong answer there. It is there is a long history of baseball stadiums being built with public dollars, and so there just isn't much of a history there. So I have some pretty deep concerns that we've been asked to do something that, as Emily has said, even if we came up with 5 million, it's not going to. It would be at some cost to us in terms of what we can't support, and it doesn't seem like it's going to take it over the top anyway. So I'm just a little worried. I understand the thinking that if you get public dollars, it helps leverage others, but in this case, they're just using public dollars to leverage other public dollars. It's not leveraging private investment. So I'm a little frustrated with the model, I guess. Okay, Alan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the M's are very important to the history and to the future of Eugene, and I think they're a great asset. And I've worked diligently to try to make that happen over the years. And we find ourselves now at this circumstance where we've got a project that somebody said it's not fully funded. And there's a big gap, and it's a huge gap. It's $43 million. And even if we gave 15 million, which we don't have, where would the other 30 million or so come from? And there are all whole other sense of questions that I have. I totally get and appreciate the people who love the M's and sending us all those emails saying how much it means to them and how important it is. But that's the emotional part. You have to put on your kind of business person's hat and your financially prudent hat also, and think about that and say, can this work? Does this make sense, especially given the price tag? And how does it work? And what are we giving up in order to do it? And how does it all happen? It's not just, yeah, we should do it. You guys figure it out. That doesn't cut it. That doesn't work. It's a community problem. And if, a solution might be a revenue bond that's voted on in the county or a bond. And I've asked people if they would support that and work on it. And they said, yes, of course we would, because we love the M's and we want them to stay. but we've got a lot of questions that we haven't been privy to because we've not been part of the conversation. And I don't want it to come down to, oh, the city of Eugene is putting cold water on this. I think what we're doing is fleshing out the reality of all of this and putting and refreshing the actual picture of it, which is very problematic, as Mike and everybody else has said.
Yeah, thank you for that. Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to think of how can I be helpful for Sarah in these last minutes, and that's not always easy, but I'm going to agree with what many people say. I think them are worth investing in, and I think looking at, like you mentioned, like the VA, that kind of support where we're looking at how can we cover these fees, how can we support them around permits and that kind of stuff, perfectly reasonable and common things, something we have done before for organizations that we want to support in our community because they mean something to our community. If we're going to invest above and beyond that, then I also agree with my colleagues, we don't have the information we need to make those decisions. And it needs to be coming from, an official source, making an official ask with the information to back it up, to show what this investment is going to do, how it fits in the picture, how this facility is going to pay for itself, but like all the things that you would insist upon before you invest in things. This is, like others have said, feels a little too casual for a large investment of public funds. I also agree that I think the idea of a bond, we should keep that also looking at that, because there is a lot of support in our community. And if folks are willing to put their own money into making this happen, I think that's something they should be available to say that they want to do. Let's see. Yeah. I hope that's helpful, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Randy.
Thank you, Mayor. I do understand, the cautionary notes here and wanting to make sure we understand what we're getting into. It seems to me at this point, we still need some more information. And, but I do like the idea of a bond as one avenue. I just don't know if the timing is going to work. And I also would like to, Sarah, if you can, looking into what it would look like for ticket surcharge for sporting venues. If that's an avenue, I mean, if we can find a new revenue stream to help support, I think that's very different than trying to come up with general fund dollars during difficult times. So those are some areas I'm interested in us looking at. I mean, I'd like to find a way to save the M's, but I also understand we're going to have limitations. So I think that's probably enough at this point, and look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Yeah, I just want to say 100% agree with Councilor Ye with everything she just said. We want to save the M's. We need to do that in a very reasonable and thoughtful way. And so I do also look forward to hearing more information and hoping that we can come up with something that makes sense. So thank you to staff and Sarah for all your work on this, and I'm excited to see what we can do.
So I just want to wrap up a little bit because I know we're at the end of time. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg's hand's still up. Mayor, just give me a chance at the end.
Okay, Greg, you take it, and then the manager.
Yeah, just one thing. Can we get a comprehensive brief report on a lot of the things that all of the councilors asked about this afternoon in terms of timing, what the hard cost figures are, what is really needed right now versus what can be done down the line on this? Because I think the best strategy for us, working in concert with the M's, would be to float a bond measure and allow the voters in the community to make the decision how they want to spend public dollars in this fashion. In addition to that, I would also ask that we explore the possibility of a fee that could be assessed in the event that the team decides to pick up stakes and leave early anyway, which we have seen on the major league level in a number of cities. And I'll note my own hometown, Cleveland, where the Browns left. The deal was, you build us a new stadium or we're going to leave. And Art Modell did leave, and Cleveland was out without pro football for 4 years. And now they have a franchise that came in early 2000s that is, not nearly what the old Browns were. And I tell people all the time, I said, look, my Browns are living in Baltimore under an assumed name and assumed colors. And those Super Bowl trophies should have been in Cleveland, not in Baltimore. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I would want some kind of payback if the M's were to move on us anyway, and they would have to pay a fee if they decided to leave.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And I'm going to say one more quick thing before the manager does, which is that I guess in the larger picture, I mean, even if there's discussion about a bond, the question is that a city bond or is that a county bond? And so I think the sort of fundamental question for me is, how does Eugene come to the table as a decision-making partner here? If we have a role as a decision-making partner. And so I guess my request would be of the M's, of the county, that if they're really seeking that kind of financial collaboration from us, then that we just need to be at the table to discuss all of these pieces, so that we're going in with our eyes wide open. And I'm inclined to think that a bond should be something that the county floats. It's on county property, but there's no way of doing that unless we actually have a seat at the table. So I'm happy to have that exploration about what the city can do independently. And there's some of the more obvious ones, but when it gets more complicated, I don't want us to be doing that in isolation as if we're shouldering the responsibility for this. We're part of a collaborative. If we're doing this, we're part of a collaboration. Okay, with that, I turn it to you, manager.
It's hard to take notes and unmute. So essentially, I heard a lot of what we've been feeling too, that there's just a lot of unknown pieces that need to get a little bit more certainty going forward. I was supposed to meet with Steve this afternoon. They had an issue at the county that he needed to change that date, but I'll get together with him soon and talk through this conversation and some of the more specifics around, when will the county commit? Have they committed? A lot of the things that you talked about around, kind of the ask, how does it make sense? How does it make money? Some of the things we've been asking, you've been asking. So we'll try to get more details on that. In the meantime, we'll continue to look at revenue sources. We're going to be looking at that anyway. We'll continue to look at, try to understand the SDC piece. We're going to continue working with them. And if something comes up during the break that you need to know about, I'll make sure to let you know.
That sounds helpful. Thank you very much for those insights and that work. And Greg, one more comment?
Yeah, Mayor, I got a question. Would we be looking at the possibility of having another work session on this outside of our break? In other words, would we be looking at coming back during the break for a special work session? I mean, do you have any ideas around that? Let's see.
I assume the mayor was going to answer it. I wasn't anticipating that.
And I'm not either. And I'm assuming that there's work that as Sarah has just said, there's some pieces that she needs to pull together. I'm not thinking that that we'll have that information, that we would need to come back until September, until the fall, when you're back anyway. Okay, if that's it, it is 1:30. It is our final work session before you all get a well-deserved break. I want to thank you all for really an incredible, long, hard push for all of 2023. Lots of issues on your plates, and I really appreciate all of you and the hard work you do and the thoughtfulness you bring to all these conversations. And I hope that you all have some time to get a little R&R and relax and rejuvenate yourselves, and look forward to coming back in September all feeling very refreshed. So thank you all so much. Have a great August.
Thanks all.